Baylor has made a really risky move of hiring someone who isn't an athletic director as their next athletic director. How does this work?
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Bears fans. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one sports podcast network in the world. I'm your host, Cam Stuart of ESPN Central Texas and the Rogue Media Network. I appreciate you guys making it your first listen today and every day. Obviously, kind of breaking stuff this weekend. All reports saying, first reported by Sikkim 365, that Doug McNamee is going to be Baylor's next athletic director with a press conference coming on Monday. This certainly opened a lot of eyes. He was not one of the shortlist names we were hearing about because he has not been an athletic director. In fact, he hasn't worked in college athletics at all in the last 7 years. And I don't know about you guys, but the way I follow college sports, it has told me that a lot has changed in college sports in the last 7 years. The landscape is completely different. We're going to go over why Baylor has made this move, because I think there are some positives here. Why this move reads like an Onion article, and what this could mean for Baylor going forward. I am going to start with the positives here, because to me, this hire felt a lot like Baylor football's recruiting class, right? There were some positives there. Baylor football's recruiting class had 4 4-stars. There are some positives. There's some things you can build off of. There's some things where you can look at it and say, okay, I have some confidence in that. But on the flip side, the recruiting class is 79th in the country. And there are certainly some things that come with this Doug McNamee hire that you're still confused about. And the things that you are sure about, you're like, well, that's not good. So let's start with the positive, I think. Baylor is making a bold move. It is a calculated risk that they are making. They are saying in today's day and age, in college football especially, if you don't have the money, you don't have anything. And once you're there, you still need the coaches. You still need the talent evaluators. You still need all of those things. But first and foremost, you need money to compete with anybody here. You know, Texas Tech and BYU, they show you that. Contrary to popular belief, it's not all the money for Texas Tech and BYU, but they have probably the best money situation of any two teams in the Big 12, and they played in the Big 12 Conference Championship game. So Doug McNamee brings that. Everyone who's worked around him says this guy is dynamite as a fundraiser, and that is what Baylor just hired, a fundraiser. Someone who can appease the donors, which is a huge part of college football, and get people on board and get some money flowing into these programs again. Because right now, that's a big issue for Baylor. With this fan apathy and sticking with Dave Aranda and all that, like the number one biggest problem about that is people are going to stop giving money. If Doug McNamee can get people to give money, then that's huge. That is humongous. Okay, and that could be, depending on how this goes, that could be the direction that other schools like Baylor, the direction that they go in. Like, let's just say Ren Baker gets hired away by somebody else. West Virginia needs to think about that when they're looking for a new AD, or even an Oklahoma State or a Cincinnati, teams that are in this conference, some of which are public schools, that are thinking we need to be able to keep up with the resources of Texas Tech and BYU. What Linda Livingstone and the Baylor administration is saying is we can't play poor. Even though we are, by not firing Dave Aranda because we can't afford the buyout, we can't be playing poor anymore. There are alums of this university and people connected to this university who have a lot of money to give. We need to be able to be sustainable in the future. We need to be able to rally the troops and get money, whether we're good or bad. Okay, so in that sense, I understand where the Baylor administration is coming from. That was their prerogative on this. We want to get a fundraiser. I fully understand that line of attack, and since that is their line of attack, they feel they have nailed this. All the rest of it I don't like. All the rest of it. Because here's where I come, my next thought in the process is, that's awesome, man. He should be head of the Bear Foundation. Like, that's what he should be. And whomever comes in here to be the AD, Doug McNamee should be the right-hand man. Make him the GM of the football team for all I care. Like, he should be the head of the money thing. But that's not all that an athletic director does. An AD books the buses, books the planes. They also hire the coaches. One of the things that Doug McNamee has as a gold star on his resume is the fact that he was part of the committee that hired Matt Rhule in 2017, 2016, which was a good hire, man. It really was. I don't like the way it ended here, but it was a heck of a hire. He's a guy who could build, and damned if he didn't build something. And that was a time where it was really tough for Baylor to go out and get a head coach coming off the back of that scandal. And so he was a part of that. But like, the other part of this too is everyone is talking about all these deep ties that he has with Baylor. That's great, except for the fact that we don't want status quo. We don't want that. That's not working. That is how you got into this mess, because this wasn't working. Like, it's almost like the Baylor admin thinks, well, Mac did a bad thing, and that's the only thing that's going wrong here. We just need to bring in someone who can get the car in the garage. But it's not. The car is way off the road. It just so happened that Mac got in this situation. You know what I mean? You haven't really replaced the core problem here. And yeah, he's got the Baylor ties. He worked under Scott Drew as a basketball manager. We had all these different roles within an athletic department, and that's awesome. But like, he's worked under two different Baylor ADs, and both of them have left in disgrace. So why are we then putting a ton of onus on, or a ton of gold stars, asterisks next to, man, he's got so much experience in the Baylor athletic department. He knows this place well. Yeah, but he worked for two people you fired in scandal. It's like working for two head coaches that didn't succeed, and you just want to bring in one of their assistants. Jeff Lebby worked under Art Briles and Lane Kiffin. Is that the kind of guy you want to bring back? You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that Doug McNamee has the skeletons in the closet that Jeff Lebby does. Trust me, I'm not saying that, but I'm hoping you're getting my point there. Of like, why are we putting so much weight to someone who worked under two ADs that you had to fire? And by the way, one of them, Ian McCaw, said only great things. This is coming from Matt Mosley, who had talked to him. Ian McCaw said, quote, Doug's thrived in every endeavor, modernized the Bear Foundation, and was instrumental in building the record donor season ticket base when we moved to McLean Stadium. 28,000. Pretty good. His strong relationships at Baylor and in Waco will serve him well. I do believe that. But we're not talking about head of the Bear Foundation. We're not just talking about a guy who can get some more season ticket holders here. We are talking about someone who controls this entire athletic department, one that has seen better days recently. Like, that's not a guy who comes in and evaluates things and says, okay, I'm going to fire Dave Aranda after the new year, and I'm going to find a good enough head coach to be in here. That's not something Doug McNamee can do, nor will he. So you're not bringing in someone who's going to take an objective look at this football program. He's only been at Baylor. He doesn't have connections around the college football world. He doesn't know coaches because he's only worked one place in the college athletics world, and he hasn't even worked there in the NIL or the transfer portal era. He was literally like the president of Magnolia. His house was the first one fixed up on Fixer Upper. It's an effing Onion headline. Like, it seriously is. Like, that's how other people around Texas think about us. Oh, you just bring a Magnolia guy in. Just get some Chip and Joe money. You'll be fine. We had Chip and Joe money. And now we're just bringing in Chip and Joe people to run the athletic department. It's not adding up to me. It's not adding up. I'm sorry, man. Like that I had the same thought. I think it was Royden Ogletree tweeted it out. Like, it sounds like an Onion headline. The president of Magnolia, former, who went to what is it, Fish and Stream or whatever, was the president of that company, is now the athletic director at a Power 4 school. Because that leads into the other part that I think is such a bad look for Baylor, is Baylor is not one of the top athletic departments in the country, size-wise, or in the last 2-3 years, success-wise, right? Certainly, they were beginning of this decade, they were right up there success-wise with anybody. But this is a show of, like, we couldn't hire a real athletic director. We couldn't hire someone who had done the job before. Like, Doug McNamee's fundraising is fantastic, and you need some of that. But, like, if we're stacking his resume up against Ren Baker or Jeremiah Dickey or Jared Mosley or even Hunter Yurachek, like, he doesn't stack up at all. So I'm wondering who is behind this process? Who is saying, no, you know what we don't need is someone who's been an athletic director and hired good coaches and led successful football programs, for the exception of Hunter Yurachek. Like, they basically said, we don't need that. We need someone who can drum up some money and keep the donors happy. Is there a place for that in this job? Absolutely. But you could have just hired an athletic director. That's just to me, that's a really, really tough sell to your fan base. Say, nah, trust us. He's Baylor. He's Waco. He's exactly what we need. Because, again, I, as a diehard Baylor fan who follows this program, this athletic department, inside and out, literally every day, I'm thinking what they need is an athletic director. As someone who can come in and objectively review what is going on in this athletic department, not just from a dollars and cents standpoint, but from a wins and losses standpoint. And Baylor's, again, declining to do that. It's just, it's bizarre. It is bizarre that you not only hired someone who hasn't been an AD before, or even an assistant AD at a big-time athletic department. He was kind of close to being that at Baylor years ago. But someone who also has not worked in athletics in 7 years? How is that the choice? Who was saying no to you? We read off 4 names that I got from 2 pretty good sources on Friday's show. I can't imagine that all 4 said no. We're not interested. Like, Yurachek would get out from whatever's. I mean, they're about to run him out of town in Fayetteville. Mosley, it's a step up. Dickey, it's a step up. And Ren Baker, you could argue it's a step up. I don't know. It's kind of lateral. West Virginia to Baylor. So to think that all 4 of them said no and that you had to go outside of the world of athletics entirely just shows another certain tone deafness that I think we are getting in the Baylor athletic department and really the Baylor administration, the president, the president's office, and the board of regents. I think there's like just a complete illiteracy when it comes to reading the room, because I just, again, you look at this mess and you say, you know, we need someone who's not an athletic director. That's how it'll work. You know, we need someone who's not an athletic director who can oversee a bad football coach, and that will fix everything. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I do think the money thing is a plus. It's a bonus. It is. But maybe I'm just behind the times. I just don't think that's how you run an athletic department, purely off of fundraising. And there's literally jobs in place where you can have someone who's pretty high up in the athletic department who just does fundraising. I hope I'm wrong. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Of course, come at you every weekday. Drop it on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts as well. And sometimes, in the case of this, on weekend nights. Doing a crossover for Monday's show. We're going to talk about the CFP and BYU and just this utter disrespect for the Big 12 conference and what that means for Baylor down the line. And we'll go over this hire a little bit more, myself and Drake Toll. So obviously look out for that Monday morning. Thank you guys so much for making it your first listen today and every day. We will see you tomorrow on your favorite show, Locked on Baylor.